Şimdi oldu galiba.
Evet.
Tamam. Okay, everything's set up now, so I'll officially introduce everything. Perfect. So, everyone, welcome to the third installment of our webinar series on digital language activism. It's sponsored by the European Union delegation to Turkey under the project Laws and Circassian Civil Societies. Today, we will be listening to Claudia Pozzo from Whose Knowledge, and who will be talking to us about how to challenge the largely monolingual state of the internet through languages and how to make internet a more multilingual place. Merhabalar arkadaşlar herkese. Üçüncü webinar serimizde Dijital Dil Aktivizmi serimizin üçüncü oturumuna hoş geldiniz. Bugün Claudia Pozzo bize eşlik ediyor olacak Whose Knowledge grubundan. Bize daha çok dilli bir internete nasıl geçebileceğimizi ve diller yardımıyla şu an genelde daha tek dilin egemen olduğu bir internete nasıl çok dilli bir ortama çevirebileceğimizi anlatacak. Bildiğiniz üzere projemiz Avrupa Birliği Türkiye Delegasyonu tarafından sponsor edilmektedir. Çok teşekkürler. Okay, Claudia, take it away. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. I am going to now try to share my screen so we can.
Yeah, we can see it just now. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Perfect. Yes, we can see it in full screen just now.
Thank you for the confirmation. All right. Well, hello everyone. To start with, I'm really glad to be here today. I want to thank the Endangered Languages Network community for inviting us to share this space and to be connected with all of you. My name is, as you already heard, Claudia. I am a brown Latin American woman, originally from Bolivia. My mother tongue is Spanish, which is the language brought to my land by Spanish colonizers more than 5 centuries ago. I am communications co-lead at Whose Knowledge. We are a global campaign working to center the knowledges of marginalized communities online. We work especially with women, people of color, LGBTQIA communities, indigenous peoples, and other communities from the Global South. And today I'm here to talk about the languages landscape in the digital world and how we can challenge knowledge injustice through languages. I want to bring into the table a few core elements of our work at Whose Knowledge, especially the work we have been doing around languages. And I hope this will serve as a provocation and as an invitation for reimagining and reframing some of the work we are all doing. I am really, really happy to learn that we have live interpretation into Turkish. So I'm going to be speaking slowly to ease the process. So moving on, I want to start talking about knowledge infrastructures because the internet itself is the most crucial infrastructure today that allows us to share information and knowledge, right? So let's take a look at who is online. Most of the world is online today. About 63% of the world population is connected to the internet. 75% of people online are from the Global South. And when we say Global South here, we mean Asia and the Pacific Islands, Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean. And we also know that about half of the women in the world are connected to the internet. Now, let's have a look at who builds our network infrastructures. Well, in terms of gender and race, only 5% of leadership positions in the technology sector are held by women, which means that men are taking the crucial decisions in this sector. In the United States, where big tech industries are located, women hold only 25% of computer roles. Of that 25%, only 5% are Asian women, 3% are Black, and 1% are Hispanic. As an example of this, we know that only 6% of technical workers at Apple are Black, and even fewer at Facebook and Google. And this means that primarily white men from the global north, especially Europe and North America, are the ones building and governing the internet. In other words, the infrastructures of the internet does not look or sound like most of us in the world. And they are missing the full richness and the textures of our many selves and our different worlds. And that is the door to a variety of knowledge's injustices, which I want to talk about next. Human language can take many forms, right? They can be oral, spoken, or signed. They can be written. They can be transmitted through drums or a whistle. But just a small part of human knowledge in these many multiple languages is actually curated, preserved, and made available in a way that it is accessible and helps building a collective language infrastructure. With over 7,000 languages in the world, including spoken and signed languages, only about 7% are captured in books, which are written in only a very few number of languages. When we take a look at whose knowledge is online and in which languages, we see that most online content is in English. That is to say, 59% of websites are in English, followed by by websites in Russian, which are a little over 8%. We also know that most users speak English, followed by Chinese. Most scholarly, including digital publications, are in English. And most of scientific journals and social science journals in the main digital libraries are in English as well. So in general, we can say that the internet is highly monolingual, which means that it is also highly monocultural, right? So this is one reason why we must think, and at whose knowledge we love to think, about how to decolonize knowledge and how to decolonize the internet. Because this bias on languages and many other skews are not accident. They come from colonization and its remaining and ongoing structures of power and privilege that permeate our everyday life. So this is one of the key frames of whose knowledge, which we apply to languages as well. Why languages? Well, at Whose Knowledge, we understand language as a proxy for knowledge. And that is because language is much more than a way of communicating. To exist in a language is totally different from doing so in a different one. So when, for example, I think and do and be and dream and imagine in Spanish, I am inhabiting the world in a completely different way than when I am thinking and doing and being in English. So language is at the core of who we are and how we are in the world. Every one of our languages is a system of knowledge in itself, right? Our language is fundamental to who we are, and it's a fundamental way in which we make sense of our world and explain it to others. That is why we say that to be multilingual is to honor and affirm the full richness and textures of our many selves and our different worlds better. And that is one reason why we worked on the State of the Internet Languages report. This was a shared initiative of Whose Knowledge, the Oxford Internet Institute, and the Center for Internet and Society in India. We are going to have a closer look at this report today in order to highlight some of the ways in which different language communities are bringing their knowledges online. And we are also going to have a really quick glance at the numbers and patterns analyzed in the report, which demonstrate how these inequities of language permeate even the most widely popular digital platforms. So we had two guiding questions when building this report. We asked how many of our languages can be fully experienced online, and what would a truly multilingual internet look, feel, and sound like? And to answer these questions, in this report, we did three different things. We mapped the current status of languages on the internet. We raised awareness of the challenges and opportunities in making a more multilingual internet, and we proposed an agenda for action. Further on what we did, this digital community source report brings together 13 contributions in 13 languages, representing 22 language communities in 12 countries from every populated continent of the world. The numbers section analyzes critical language issues in a total of 39 popular websites, digital platforms, applications, and devices that we use every day, with deep insights on platforms like Wikipedia and Google Maps. The report also anchors this data analysis in the deep stories that offer us a beautiful collage of how different people and communities around the world experience the internet in their own languages. And then we have the summary, which whips together the numbers and stories, and it brings an agenda for action. And as we always remind ourselves and our communities, this is a work in progress that we will continue to improve and to build upon in the future. So what we learned, our findings show that the web is, of course, nowhere near as multilingual as we imagine or we need it to be. Roughly 500 of over 7,000 spoken and signed languages are represented online in any form of information or knowledge. Meanwhile, about 75% of those who access the internet do so in only 10 languages. 10 languages. These languages, such as English, Chinese Mandarin, Spanish, and French, often have a European colonial history or are regionally dominant. And we have also learned that historical and ongoing structures of power and privilege are intrinsic to the way in which languages are accessible or are not accessible online. So let me move to the stories. The stories of this report were curated by our friends at the Center for Internet and Society in India. And this section gives us a deeper understanding of how different people and communities around the world experience the internet in their own languages. And in many cases, how difficult it is right now to find information they need in their own languages as well. So I'm going to refer briefly to each essay in this section because I believe it's crucial to have a look at these experiences in order to understand the reality of people across the globe in the context of knowledge, injustice, and languages from their own voices and embodied experiences. So one of the key issues addressed in the stories refers to the type of content that is available online in different languages and what this means in the lived experiences of marginalized communities. Here, Pasca from Indonesia tells in their essay how essential the internet was to them in order to find information about gender and sexual orientation as a teenager, but how difficult it still is to find educational and positive queer content in Bahasa Indonesia online. Another author in this section, Ishan from India, brings to the spotlight the intersections of marginalities in online content from his embodied experience as a queer person with visual disability. A different key aspect in the stories is the main challenges encountered by minority languages speakers in language technology. In her essay, Claudia from Italy focused on certain minority languages of the European Union and explored to what extent can language technology be affected by colonial attitudes and how this impacts the digital usability of minority languages as well. In another essay, Donald from Malawi shares that when he asked native Chinese speakers how they communicated via their phones, they all described how time-intensive and laborious it is to communicate in Chinese, as most of their phones were embedded with language support in English, in French, or in Arabic, and did not recognize Chinese. And these are technological challenges that added to the economic and social constraints that limit the ability of Chinese speakers to buy a smartphone or data plans to access the internet. Similarly, Uda from Sri Lanka narrates how her parents printed tiny Sinhala letters, cut them out, and taped them onto the keys beside the original English characters because keyboards with Sinhala and Tamil letters are rare. She goes on to explain that the need of having and using special tools and skills to write in local languages contributes to the lack of progressive content in these languages, and also how that is one reason why there is a scarcity of digital content that is feminist, that is human rights friendly, and that is respectful in local languages in Sri Lanka. Further on the key aspects of the stories, some essays focused on the political, social, and cultural elements that pose challenges to indigenous languages speakers. For example, Ana from Mexico, building on her experience with Zapotec, highlighted how the internet falls short in providing space for languages that do not have a standard writing system, and how this jeopardizes efforts for access, documentation, and preservation of the language. Also, Emna from Tunisia reached out to African and Arab content creators and consumers who shared their experiences in posting content in their own language and in creating more online visibility for their cultures through their languages. And the final key aspect of the stories I want to share today is the one bringing together the existing efforts for reclaiming and keeping alive indigenous languages. Here we have the Kimeltue project that focuses on online teaching of Mapuzungún language, which is spoken by the Mapuche people in the territories known today as Chile and Argentina. And while doing this amazing work, Kimeltue project also highlights themes related to the history and identity of the Mapuche people. And we also have the essay of Jeffrey and Ashley, who shared with us the Decolonizing Digital project from Turtle Island, colonially called Canada, the United States, and Mexico. In this project, they documented indigenous people's utilization of social media platforms, such as Twitter and its hashtags, for the survival and learning of indigenous languages. And then we have the Indigemoji project from Australia, explained to us in the voice of Joel and Katie, who described how emojis representing the Arendelle indigenous language was created in a really fascinating multi-generational process back in 2018. So these are the stories I wanted to share with you today in the hope that they are useful to increase our understanding of some of the contexts in which people from across the globe are accessing online content in their languages and are also at the same time bringing their knowledges online. Then I want to quickly move to the numbers and patterns of the report. The numbers and patterns analyze a few critical language issues in some of the digital platforms, applications, and devices that we use every day. Our friends at the Oxford Internet Institute led this work, which is authored by Martin Litus and Mark Graham. So one of the key pieces of this section is a platform survey in which Martin and Mark analyzed the language support of 11 websites, 12 Android apps, and 16 iOS apps. The list is here in this image on the right. They chose widely used platforms, in particular those platforms that seek to have a global presence and audience across the globe. They also had to rely on publicly available data for these platforms and apps, and also they focused on written text interfaces and content rather than voice. The findings show that text-based language support is highly unequally distributed across different digital platforms, opening the door to a potential digital exclusion of billions of people on the basis of their language preference. In fact, we estimate that at least 3 to 5 billion people cannot use their preferred language when accessing these widely used websites and apps. What does this lack of language support mean for most people across the world? Well, now we know that interface languages support is limited to particular languages. Some European and some Asian languages are very widely supported, while thousands of other languages are not supported at all, including languages from the Global South, of course. Last year, it was estimated that there are almost 8 billion humans in our planet, most of whom live in Asia and Africa. So what this lack of language support mean for people in Africa, for example, is that more than 90% of Africans need to switch to a second language in order to use these platforms. And for many, this may mean a European colonial language or a more dominant language in their region. We also learned that major web platforms like Wikipedia, Google Search, and Facebook offer the most language support currently. And interestingly, Wikipedia, which is a non-profit and edited by volunteers from around the world, is the most comprehensive translated platform by far, with over 400 languages supported in basic user interface. So I'm gonna pause here with the numbers. There is much, much more on the report, so I invite you to have a look whenever you can. So I'm gonna go to the next piece of the report that I want to share with you, and that is the report website. And I'm including this part in the presentation because websites have become such a powerful way of sharing our knowledge online. They are crucial places for digital activism, and there are so many aspects around the process of website design and development that also need to be shared, contextualized, and even decolonized. So I'm gonna focus on 3 lessons learned in this process, which refer to translations, open source software, and accessibility and navigability. And I'm going to speak to them while I browse the report website. I'm gonna change windows and hopefully I won't break too much. Okay, the flow of the presentation. Here we are. So this is the State of the Internet Languages Report website. It was designed and created from scratch for this report, taking into account its specific needs regarding content architecture, navigability, visual identity, accessibility, multilinguality, and so on. So one of the key pieces of this work have been translations, both of the content itself as well as of the website. The report website at this moment is available, here you can see, in English, Spanish, Zapotec, Bengali, Swahili, Portuguese, Arabic, French, Bahasa Indonesia, and Taiwanese Mandarin, with international sign coming soon. And to make this happen, we opted for a human-centered translation process by contrast to a machine-centered translation. This means that we work closely with different native speakers, translators. You can see them here, have a look at who they are. And we also worked very closely with reviewers, who reviewed the translations and also reviewed the report. And this was a long and very demanding process that needed a lot of care and communication. Yeah, but it was also fulfilling, and I think it contributed to bringing people together and creating community around the project. And then you can see here the stories that are available in the languages that were originally written by the authors, and they have also been translated into English by the authors themselves. And regarding accessibility, which is something I wanted to talk about as well, we tried to make this report multilingual and multimodal in order to make it more accessible to everyone, but also to reflect the richness of languages. So we made available audio versions in different languages of many of the stories. So this one that you're seeing here, that is in Zapotec right now, has an audio version in Spanish and in Zapotec. And that happens with many other stories, and it happens also with the summary report that has audio versions in different languages as well. Here it is in Bengali, and I don't know, here it is in Indonesian or in Egyptian Arabic. And these audio files can be downloaded as well for people to share freely and easily. And then from a more technical perspective, I wanted to talk a bit about open source. And in our use case in particular, I want to highlight the importance of choosing a framework and a language that has native Unicode support. In this case, I built a website with Hugo, which is an open source static website framework written in Go. And as a more personal choice, I used Tailwind CSS for building the multi-device interface. This is also a static website to make it more secure, efficient, and light. Thinking about folks with limited internet bandwidth who will most likely be browsing the site from the global south. And even though it has illustrations and it has an animation, its performance score is very high. So I'm gonna just invite you to browse around and read through the report. So I'm gonna stop here and I'm gonna go back to the slides. And the final piece I want to share with you is the agenda for action that we are proposing in the summary report. So we think we need to work together to create and expand a truly multilingual internet and bring our many different skills and expertise into this task. So that is one key aspect, working together. Another key issue is that because marginalized communities have historically seen their knowledge exploited by others, we should be respectful of why they choose to share with the world. This is a way to ensure that the information and knowledges we share in these many languages do not cause any harm, but instead lead to the collective good of our world. In short, we need what we call solidarity in action. If you belong to any of these sectors, technology, standards organizations, free and open source, and open knowledge, communities, government, philanthropy, GLAM institutions, and etc. In our report, we have left concrete actions that we can all put into practice in order to advance towards a multilingual internet. And this is an invitation for all of us, to just have a look at them and to bring many more solidarity in action into our everyday lives. So this is sort of the end of my presentation, but first, before leaving, I want to make sure that we stay connected. So here is our website. Reach out to us via social media, drop me a line if there's anything you'd like to share with us. We will be glad to hear from you. And I'm going to end this presentation with a very short video of the state of the Internet Languages Report that I hope you can hear. Okay.
I don't think we can hear it.
Oh.
It might be because if you're wearing earphones or headphones, that might be one of the reasons. I'm not sure.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so very much for having me.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Claudia. It was very interesting. There's a lot that we can learn from the report, definitely. I think I will open the floor for Q&A, but before I open the floor, could I ask if the State of the Internet's Languages report is also available in Turkish by any, do you have any idea?
Not yet. It's not yet. Yes. We are looking forward to include more translations. Of course, we would love to have it in Turkish. And as a work in progress as it is, we are, yes, looking forward to expand it into many more languages.
Absolutely. So another follow-up question for, I suppose, everyone would be, could people just get in touch with you to say, hey, we want to be translators, maybe to translate your material? How would that work? Could you give the listeners a bit of idea about that?
That's a great question. Yes. So we have in the website this button here in the footer that says engage. Mm-hmm. And if you go there, you're going to find different ways of engaging with the report, whether you are a translator or you are in media or if you are from a marginalized community and so on. So yes, please drop us a line. Our email is here when you hover into these different parts. Mm-hmm. The email anyways is languages@whosknowledge.org, or you can write to my personal claudia@whosknowledge.org email. Mm-hmm. And we will be more than happy to connect with you and to scheme together.
That's great. That's very easy to follow. So that's always a nice, that's always a nice sign. Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I think I will open the floor for any questions at all. So just so everyone knows, you can ask your questions through the chat. You can ask, you can raise your hand and ask it. Any format is fine. If you write it down, one of us will read it out. And you can write it in Turkish by any means. That's absolutely fine.
So I had kind of prepared a little a little,
Oh,
a few questions that, because I'm curious about all of you. And so I wanted to ask you, how are you bringing your language online, and what are the challenges you face, and what do you imagine as well? Because imagination is such a key piece of this work. We cannot create what we cannot imagine, right? So, also in that spirit, what is the one action you would most like to see for a multilingual internet, right? So just dropping that there in case anyone would like to engage.
that's great. I'll just like these questions, I'll read them out loud so our interpreter can also translate them into Turkish, so everyone has an idea. So these are, if you don't have any questions yourselves, there are some discussion questions that Claudia provided us. That's very kind of you. And these questions are, how are you bringing your own language online? And when you're doing that, what are the challenges that you face? And also, for future reference, what's the one action you would most like to see for a multilingual internet? So very interesting questions. Yes. I will try to leave the floor for other people because I am Turkish. So I would much rather like to hear from people here who do come from different linguistic and cultural backgrounds than me, let's say.
If nobody else is going to ask a question.
Eylem, you go first and then Mihriban can go second. How about that? Perfect.
No, it's okay. I think Mihriban should go first.
Okay, Mihriban, go ahead. Yes.
Teşekkür ederiz sunumunuz için. Ben sadece son soruya cevap vermek istiyorum. Bu internette izlediğimiz, portallarda izlediğimiz dizilerdeki, filmlerdeki altyazıların ya da dublajların kendi dilimde olmasını isterdim. Hatta bununla ilgili bir çalışma olursa da, yaparsak da biz yaparız herhalde de. Böyle bir çalışmada da yer almayı çok isterim.
Just to double check, Claudia, what was that translated to you? Was that?
No, it was not.
Okay. So
I can speak English.
Oh, that's fine too. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, first of all, because your presentation. I want to say your last question. I want to say about that. We are watching everyday movies and series, and I want to see my language in the subtitles or in the doublage.
The dubbing, yes, the dubbing.
Yes, sorry. And if there is any working about that, I want to work, and this is so exciting for me.
And just to check, Mihriban, your language would be Laz, right? Just to... Yes, exactly. It is one of those hard languages to find on the internet, of course, and it would be very interesting if one day you just opened up Netflix and you can see like one of the subtitles or dubbing options is just Laz, right? That would be very interesting, absolutely. I suppose that's something you might hear a lot from other people too, Claudia. I don't know if this discussion question is something you've asked before. Do other people ever say similar things like this?
Well, yes. I think there is a general craving, right, for seeing our languages represented in these different platforms that have become ubiquitous in our lives. And one thing that I remembered while listening to this intervention was, for example, there are some friends from the Kimanture project who shared that sometimes they create their content in Mapudungun, but when they are uploading it, for example, captions, when they are uploading those to YouTube or to Facebook, they don't have the option in the menu to choose, this is Mapudungun, right? So yes, absolutely. There are so many barriers, when we want to make our languages visible online. And yes, most of these, of course, barriers are related to how these platforms are built and who build them and under which mind frames, right? So yeah, that's a very important point in the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you. And that's a very good point about, even when you want to do this, there might be problems with tagging it, like you said, like it's not structured for you to have space in this environment. So that's a very good point, definitely. Eylem, do you want to ask your question? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Now, I would like to start with answering Claudia's question, first of all, and then I'll end with a question myself. So, okay. So within the context of this European Union funded project, Last Education Civil Society Network project, what we're doing is we are actually bringing our language online through lots of different videos in both Laz and Turkish languages. But not only that, but we're actually, within the scope of this project, we're also dealing with other endangered languages in Turkey too. So we are actually publishing lots of things, not publishing, but broadcasting, let's say. Lots of videos, and we're preparing podcasts, and we're actually speaking to other people, to people who are the native speakers of different endangered languages, regarding their languages and what their hopes are, and what their challenges are. And also we are, we've made some cartoons for children and puppet shows in our languages. And also what we're doing is, like, we had storytelling sessions as well. And, there are some videos on these too. And apart from that, we're currently working on online dictionaries, vocal dictionaries, both for Laz and Circassian languages. And what I would like to ask you is, you mentioned about the importance of being in cooperation and in solidarity. So the biggest challenge we're having at the moment is that we're having difficulty actually reaching out to the rest of the world and passing on the information about our languages. So I would like to ask you if it would be possible for you to have some of our materials, online materials, such as the online dictionary, the vocal dictionary that I mentioned about, in your websites. Thank you.
So yes, I think I want to highlight in what you said, Eylem, sorry if I'm mispronouncing it,
It's fine, thank you.
Oh, I'm glad. So there is one key piece about the multi-generational involvement in making our languages visible online, right? And because it's, of course, usually younger generations who tend to not learning the language anymore, right? And that happened in my case. I never learned any indigenous language from my territory. And I think one beautiful project that shows us one way of doing this is the Indigimoji project from Australia, because the process in which they carried out the project involves both older generations of Arundel speakers as well as very, very young generations. And they all sat together and together designed emojis, thinking about the meanings they would have and what would they represent, right? So it was actually a way of an encounter, right, from different generations. And I think that is really beautiful and also something very important, right? When you talked about cartoons for children and storytelling sessions, right? Those are really key pieces in how we can advance towards more multilingual internet, but also more multilingual world, taking care of our endangered languages. And about the different materials that different projects, different people, you and we, and so many other organizations are creating, right? So I think networking is also one key piece in this work. We definitely need to stick together and support each other, right? And share the work we're doing and help visualizing what others are doing. I think social media, I'm not really a fan of social media. I really have my reservations there, but I think one good thing they have is that they do allow us to create networks for amplification and for support. So I think using that in that way would be really, really good. And as for the dictionary, you are mentioning the online dictionary and those things, we will be happy to share that in our newsletter or in different ways, on social media, or send it out to our communities. Because yes, part of really the work we at Post Knowledge are doing is amplifying these amazing initiatives and voices from so many different parts of the globe, right? So yeah.
Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to again ask if anyone else wants to ask any questions or add to the discussion about like the discussion questions. I'm not sure if our participants can, like the attendees can write or say anything. I'm not sure. Because I can see a couple of people, but I'm not sure if they have the sort of permissions on Zoom to be able to write or speak. Could we check that maybe? There we go. Okay. Büşra, let's hear you. Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me? Oh, you can't see me, right?
We can't now. I think we can. Yes, perfect. We can hear and see you. Perfect. Yes.
Okay. Claudia, thank you very much for your interesting presentation today. It was really, really important for me, actually. So I have one comment about your presentation and one contribution to your discussion questions, actually. So first of all, I'm also studying in the multilingualism and the minority languages in the UK, actually, basically. So one thing that I want to highlight that these online spaces, these are quite important for the younger generations of minority languages and the endangered languages. So let's think that way. The young people in this generation, they use the online space a lot, right? Like chatting, video messaging and everything, and using these spaces in their daily life. And they grow older. So these young people, when they grow older, they will be involving in the internet a lot. So this research has a future, obviously. So that's why I like to highlight that part. It is really important, actually. The thing that I want to contribute to your discussion is that the questions that you asked, I think let me see the question, but where is it? It was something about like, one thing that I would like to see in the internet, right? Like, yeah, the third one. Let me see if it is coming. Yeah. You most like to see for a multilingual internet, you said. I would like to see more code switching, code mixing in the multilingual internet, actually. So it should be something, I believe that it shouldn't be something like the bounded languages in the internet environment. So maybe we could talk about code switching, code mixing, something more flexible and something that we can think of a linguistic repertoire, if you like. So these are the things that I would like to contribute. And thank you very much again.
Thank you. Claudia, do you want to comment on the comments, or is there anything you would like to add? In case, of course, code switching might not be a term that is familiar to everyone, because it is a bit of a sort of academic, it's still within the academic circles. So what we mean by that, of course, is basically switching between languages without really caring for whether you're speaking language X or language Y at that point. So, when you're speaking to someone who speaks the same languages as you, I'm sure we have a bunch of Laz and Turkish speakers here. I'm sure some of them will be will understand when you're speaking to someone else who speaks Laz and Turkish, you keep using like both of those languages as you're speaking to each other, right? That kind of situation. And of course, it's kind of hard to sort of implement that to the internet, right? Because we're so used to websites being like, okay, click here for English and then click here for Turkish, click here for this, right? So it would be really interesting to see how that would pan out in a sort of very multilingual, very translanguaging or code switching in internet. So that's a very interesting point. Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's really interesting. I was muted and I couldn't unmute myself. But I was going to ask about actually what code switching was, because I'm not familiar. Well, now I am a little more familiar with that. But I think it's definitely a fun conversation to have, right? Because orally, I think it works easy, right? To mix languages, to switch from one to another. We have, for example, in Spanish, when we speak a mix of Spanish and English, we say Spanglish, right? And those things, which is, I think, only a way of how languages actually are not these fixed frameworks, right, that we should fit into, but they reflect actually how we are, right, how we change through time, who we are in different moments of time, right, and that is lovely, though there is, of course, an obstacle of bringing that online, right, because languages online, they work through standards, right? Like there are these standards saying that these are these languages and they work with, Unicode codes and ISO language codes and all these standardization that allows that the website, that the internet rather, works in the way it does regarding multilinguality, right? So yes, I think one key piece of this conversation as well relates to who builds those standards, right? Whose knowledge is embedded in those standards and who takes the decisions there. So definitely another space to be decolonized, right? And to be opened up. But yes, yes, that's really a very interesting, focus for languages online.
Perfect. That's a great point as well. Like who structured it the way it is now. Absolutely, that is a very good discussion. And I feel like that's the thing that we keep coming back to, right? Like who created this and how do we change this, basically. So that's exactly. That's why it's always important to be able to collaborate with each other. Thank you both for those contributions. It's a very interesting discussion, honestly. Anyone else? Would anyone else like to say anything? I think we have maybe about another 10 minutes or so for any questions or comments. Let me see. Don't see any hands. There we go. Otherwise, I think we can also just call it a day for now. That would be fine as well. But if anyone has any questions, absolutely don't hesitate to ask, or if any comments, don't hesitate to tell us. So I'll just wait for like another 10 seconds, basically. Okay, let me see.
Yeah, maybe in the meantime, I can share also another report that we just published that is about decolonizing the internet structured data,
right? Which
relates very much to what we are talking about, right? So in this report, this is the result of a gathering that we had last year with different people working around structured data. And so many points came out of this conversation, basically whose perspectives, right, whose knowledge, whose frameworks, whose ontologies are setting up the categories by which information is organized online. So yeah, there's just to share a little bit of that as well, of the many aspects that make our life, our digital life possible, and how these many aspects are sometimes hidden, right? That it's not really easy to see or to spot what's happening with structured data, right? But I think as digital citizens, as digital inhabitants of the internet, we should try and have a look at who is behind the decisions on the infrastructure and on the standards and on the many little pieces that make the internet be the internet, right? So yeah, I'm gonna leave you with that. I think if you want to have
definitely. Thank you for that. Decolonization is still not very big in Turkish circles, but I feel like we will get there at some point, and like being able to see these conversations. I mean, you guys are already paving the way for us, you know, so by the time we will be there, you know, there will be a lot of stuff to learn from. So that's always great to see and great to hear. Thank you. So if we don't have any other questions or comments, I think
Ismail has a question because
perfect. Perfect. Sorry, I didn't see that. Before
Merhaba,
İsmail Hocam bir saniye
bilgilendirici sunumunu
acaba şeye geçti mi? Çünkü Claudia'ya en son çeviri olmuyordu. Yani bir channel'a girmesi gerekiyor mu acaba Türkçeden İngilizceye duyabilmesi için?
Chinese.
I switched to interpretation in English, so I think I
Perfect.
should get it
Okay,
now.
perfect.
I'm sorry, I didn't do that before. I didn't realize.
Okay, lovely. İsmail Hocam buyurun. Buyurun.
Öncelikle yararlı ve bilgilendirici sunumunuz için teşekkür ediyorum. Aslında çok uzun bir zamandır, özellikle 1998'den beri internet ortamında, öncelikle bilgisayar ortamında Lazca kendi ana dilimi yazabilme konusunda sorunlarla karşılaşmaya başladım. 2000'lerden sonra da internet üzerinde Lazca, internet ortamlarında Lazca yazma sorunuyla karşılaştık ve bu sorun hala devam ediyor. Şimdi bizim kullandığımız alfabe 1984 yılında geliştirilmiş bir alfabe ve bu alfabeyi geliştiren insanlar daktilo kafasıyla düşündüler. Yani bunu daktilo için kullanıyorlar. Bilgisayarı düşünebilir kesinlikle ve muhtemelen karşılaşmamışlardı o tarihe kadar. Geliştirilen alfabeyle daktiloda yazılabiliyordu ve bir sıkıntı yaratmıyordu. Ama biz örneğin Word ortamında Lazca yazmaya çalıştığımızda çok ciddi bir sorunla karşılaştık. Çünkü Lazca'ya özgü karakterler Word'de yoktu. Yani Times New Roman ya da Arial fontu içinde. Bunlar bulunmuyor. Bir arkadaşımla bu karakterleri ya da benzerlerini bulabilmek için günlerce araştırma yaptığımızı bir üniversitede, çünkü insanların pek çoğunda yine bilgisayar yoktu o süreçte. Hatta Boğaziçi Üniversitesi'nde matematik bölümünde asistandı. Çok uzun bir mesai harcadık ama bulamadık. Neyse bizim bilmediğimiz bir yerden bir font geldi ve o fontla Word'de yazmaya başladık ve neredeyse hala o fontla yazıyoruz. Çünkü font geliştiremedik ondan sonra. Font nasıl geliştirileceğini de aslında bilmiyor gibi bir halimiz var yani şu anda bile. Sonra internet ortamında, yani Facebook'ta, sosyal medya ortamlarında ya da herhangi bir web sayfasında Lazca karakterleri nasıl yazabiliriz konusunda da sıkıntı yaşıyoruz. Bir font kullanılabiliyor. İşte kendi bilgisayarınızda bu görünüyor ama başka bilgisayarlarda bu font yüklü değilse karakterleri göremiyorsunuz mesela. Böyle bir sıkıntı var. Ya da bazı uzman kişiler bu meseleyi çözebiliyor bir şekilde ama uzman olmayan sıradan bir kullanıcı bunu çözemiyor. Ve Lazca font kullandıysanız bunlar bozuk, farklı karakterler şeklinde yansıyor. Biz Lazca'da bunları yaşıyoruz. Diğer dillerde ne yaşandığını açıkçası bilmiyorum Türkiye için konuşacak olursak. Ve bunun dışında elbette ki Türkiye'de kullandığımız F klavye ve Q klavye, ki yaygın olan Q klavye de Türkiye'de, bizim 35 harfli Laz alfabesine göre bir şey yok. Bir harf sistemi ya da bu harflerin bulunduğu bir yerde yok ayrıca. Yine biz Lazca fontla yazmak istesek bile onu ezbere bilmemiz gerekiyor. Ona göre yazmamız gerekiyor. Pek çok insanda bunu yazamıyoruz zaten. Şimdi soru şu, tehlike altındaki dil konuşucuları zaten dezavantajlı gruplar. Bu insanların pek çok, yani bu grupların, bu toplumların pek çok eksiklikleri var. Birincisi, örneğin bilgisayar teknolojisi konusunda yeterince bilgi sahibi değiller. Bu topluluk içinde olup da bu bilgiye sahip olanların da pek çoğu bu işe girmek istemiyorlar farklı sebeplerden dolayı. Bir başka şey, bunu para verip yaptırmaya kalksanız, mesela Lazca için konuşalım, böyle bir para da yok. Ve tahmin ediyorum dünyadaki diğer bizim gibi dezavantajlı grupların benzer sorunları var diye düşünüyorum. Dolayısıyla internet ortamında kendi ana dillerimizle içerik oluşturma meselesi de bir ciddi bir sıkıntıyla, problemle karşı karşıyayız. Olanaksızlıklarla, imkansızlıklarla hem bilgi açısından hem para açısından sorunlar yaşıyoruz. Başka bir nokta, kendi ana dilinizle, ki bu ana dillerin, ben dünya açısından söylüyorum, hem Türkiye'de hem dünyada, bunlar çok uzun yıllar, hatta 20. yüzyıl boyunca pek çoğu yasaklı olan dillerdi. Böyle olduğu için de bu dillerde aydın, sanatçı, entelektüel, bu dilleri yazabilecek, bilim, sanat, edebiyat üretebilecek insan sayısı da az. Yok gibi bir şey yani. Yani çok çok çok düşük, öyle söyleyeyim. Dolayısıyla biz iki noktada problem yaşıyoruz içerik oluşturma noktasında. Birincisi, teknik bilgiye sahip değiliz. İkincisi, bu teknik bilgi eksikliğini giderecek maddi imkanlara sahip değiliz. Ve üçüncüsü, içerik oluşturma bilgi ve becerisine sahip değiliz. Bunu genel olarak söylüyorum. Aralarında bazı insanlar buna sahip olabilir şüphesiz. Ya da her grupta 3 kişi, 5 kişi, ki en çok bu kadardır, bu bilgiye sahip olabilir. Ben pek çok şey yaptım Lazca üzerinde, ama benim bunu yapabilmemin bir sebebi de benim bilgisayar öğretmeni olmam yani. Ve bilgisayar konusunda uzman olmamdı. Bunu becerebilmemin sebebi, bu uzmanlığa sahip olmayanlar bunu beceremediler, yapamadılar ve hep problemli şekilde işte bozuk alfabelerle yayınlar yaptılar, içerik ürettiler. Yani burada soru olarak da bunu düşünebilirsiniz. Yani biz bunu nasıl aşacağız? Birinci, belki de tek soru bu olabilir. Şansımız var mı? Onu bilmiyorum. Çünkü dünyadaki program üreticileri, software üreticileri bu işleri yaparlarken Lazca gibi ya da başka bir dili düşünmüyor. Yeterince pazar var mı? Ona göre içerik üretiyor. Siz ne düşünüyorsunuz bu konuda?
Well, there are many things in there. Thank you, Ismail. I hope I got that right. There are many things. So the technical issues, and as you spoke, I was thinking about Uda's essay, right? When she told us about the Sinhali letters that her parents had to paste into the keywords. And I think that is a very, sadly, an extended problem in many language communities, the lack of adequate hardware and software that support the languages. And one thing that we suggest in the report for people working in technology is that they need to be more careful and include more human processes when they design technology, right? And including human processes also means include people speaking the languages who are able to voice the issues they are facing, right? And when we say solidarity in action, right, that's what we mean. We mean that we need to work together. The people who speak the language, the people who create technology, the people who create the standards for languages and so on. And those partnerships are many times difficult and many times low, and many times they are, they feel like they don't reach an end, right? But I think we need to persevere, like in that sense that we need to keep trying to make all these processes open and more welcoming for people like the Laz and Circassian communities. And yes, then of course, having technical issues for writing in a language also hinders the possibility of people creating more content in that language, right? And therefore, younger generations, as you yourself are pointing out, they don't produce content anymore, or the content is not, it lacks the many keywords, for example, in Sinhala that are getting missed. They are disappearing because computers don't support those special characters, right? So those kind of things that also impact the quality of the content that we are creating. And I think there is not one solution to this problem, right? I think it's a problem that needs to be tackled from different angles. And one angle is the one of partnerships with people working on creating these technologies. And also, I think documentation is also very useful. So to have all this story that you brought to us today, to have it documented so that people can really understand and go back to the story to rethink and reflect around those problems and try and solve them in the future as well, right? So I will offer that. Maybe it's not much, right? But it's a place to start.
Teşekkürler.
Başka bir soru var mı acaba?
I think we lost our hosts.
Evet, burada gözüküyor ama
Oturum sahibi kim?
I think it was Betül, but I think she left for a reason.
Betül Hanım
Actually,
burada
she just
gözüküyor
woke
hala.
up and her internet has been disconnected. So I think she dropped.
Yeah, must be.
It was her internet problem. So unless there are any other questions, then I suppose this is the end of our webinar today. So no more questions. Okay. Thank you, Claudia, for joining us today, and thank you for the wonderful presentation. And we'll be in contact, and as you've said, we'll be in solidarity with each other. So, and thank you to everybody who came and joined us today as well. And we shall see you in our next webinar in that case. Thank you, and have a nice evening, all of you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.